Welcome in to the Mile High Hoops podcast. He is Shapiro Piro. I am Jake Shapiro. And we previewed it on Monday. We were like, this is going to be a great game. We gave you all the breakdowns, what we expected, and we built that up. And somehow it was even better than the billing. Monday night against the Houston Rockets was the game of the year so far. Might end up being the game of the year on the entire season. The drama, the shot making, the back and forth between the two teams, and the refs getting involved. It was pure everything I love about the NBA, quite honestly. And I talk about this all the time. Right now, from right about before Christmas through early February, this is the heart of the NBA season. This is when the teams are playing at their best, when everyone's trying hard. No one's really tanking too hard quite yet. And you have the teams that have kind of figured themselves out a little bit, like Houston, like Denver. And you have an unbelievable performance from Nikola Jokic and Alpi Sengun in that game. Kevin Durant was fantastic. Spencer Jones was fantastic. Jamal Murray was fantastic. You're going to see these two teams play again on Saturday, which we'll get into. But AP, I haven't talked to you about this game at all. We were texting a little bit about it before it ended, but just give me your thoughts on this one, because I think this is, in the world that the Oklahoma City Thunder don't exist, this is the Western Conference Finals. It might end up being the Western Conference semifinals this year.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it was a sensational basketball game, 128-125, your final score, and kind of a back and forth affair. And it's like, we kind of build it like a heavyweight fight, right? Like Tyson versus Holyfield, like that type of dynamic. And it lived up to it and some. Like a lot of times these heavyweight fights are in the UFC, for example, they don't live up to the expectation. I mean, this was it. And instead of having to wait 2 or 3 years for the rematch, we get it again on Saturday. And frankly, it's kind of like the third, the trilogy coming to a conclusion here to a certain extent, given the fact that they played another banger game to start the year much earlier in the season as well. And so, I mean, this is what you want if you're a basketball fan, man. And I understand there's Bronco mania right now and everyone's, all in on the Broncos as they should be. But I love the point that you make. Like, we're getting to the real meat and potatoes of this NBA season right now, where, as you alluded to, teams know who they are. They're playing in a good flow state right now. And I think what stands out to me was just all the drama. I mean, you had the stars being the stars. Kevin Durant with 25 points, Alpi Sengun with 33. You mentioned Nikola Jokic with 39 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists. And Jamal Murray continues to make his case to be an all-star this season with his 35 points. You've got Ime Udoka with some drama at the end of the game. You've got the last 2-minute report that came out that kind of stirs the pot here a little bit as well. Jokic and Valanciunas both not there at the end of the game due to some foul stuff. It was everything you wanted and more. And let's just take the Nuggets side out of it for a moment. Just as a sports fan, that is what you want to see.
Yeah, AP, I get in these moments when I'm covering games, and let alone I'm wearing a Nuggets shirt, but let alone just the Nuggets angle I've got. I was straight up cheering, not for any team, but like Kevin Durant hit a couple of those shots. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Like, I was just loving that basketball game. Like, I do this job because I love sports, not because I love one team in specific.
Same.
And that is why I love it. Like, just athletes going at it at their absolute best, executing at the highest level. Like, that was just such a fun environment to be at and be around. And it breaks out in a game on a Monday night. Who would have guessed? In lieu of NBA Cup on Peacock as one of the best games of the year. AP, I'll ask you this. And most fans probably watched this game like you did on TV. I was there for us. Now that we've seen the entire picture with the last 2-minute report come out, the biggest story lingering after this game was both Alpi Sengun saying that one day he expects to get those calls like Nikola Jokic, which implies Nikola Jokic gets calls, which we all know he doesn't, not really to the level of the other superstars. It also implies Alpi Sengun will one day be as good as an MVP level player, which I think is something that's going underreported from that quote. Secondarily, we have Ime Udoka fined $25K for saying that Zach Zarba, who's one of the best refs in the NBA, who was horrible Monday night for both teams, basically saying he was starstruck, and then they had 2 call-up refs that neither of them should be there, which was factual, I guess. The referees were the talking point. And I was tweeting throughout the game how horrible of a job the referees were doing for both sides. Like, they had lost control of that game. So I just kind of want your take on what you saw on television, because you had a better close-up view, I guess, in the way of the replays and the way the game was covered. and what that whistle looked like and how it impacted the game. Were the Rockets right? I personally thought that the Nuggets were hosed for 3/4 of that game.
Yeah, I do think the Nuggets were hosed for a majority of that game as well. And look, Denver's been on the short end of that stick time and time again. I mean, I could like literally picture your tweets of like the L2M when it comes out of like, if this they admitted to this call, that call, right? And you get the little one sentence answers from the referees at the end of the game. So we have been, covering the Nuggets, and Nuggets fans out there have been on the opposite end of this spectrum time and time again. And so, yeah, I mean, I thought there was bad calls both ways, right? And you didn't have Nikola Jokic nor Jonas Valanciunas out there for the Nuggets at the end of that game. It was Bruce Brown closing. So it's like, I'm not trying to say that's null and void, but it's not exactly like the Nuggets were at complete full strength in that final period of the overtime. And again, just to zoom out, like, this is not a basketball issue. Like, you see it in the NFL all the time. You see it in hockey all the time. You see it in baseball all the time. These officials, I understand it's a high pressure job and all that kind of stuff, but it always becomes a story, which is annoying to the sports fan out there. But I do think, I'm gonna chalk it up to, from the Houston Rockets perspective, and maybe this isn't fair and the Rocket fan won't like this, but it's a little bit of growing pains. Like, I think we've seen Jokic start to get some more calls. I don't think he gets as many as we'd like him to, especially with the scratches on his arms that are, everlasting throughout the course of the season right now. But, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, Jake.
Jokic had never flopped. Never, ever had flopped until the 2023 Western Conference Finals, when he saw up close how LeBron was manipulating the referee.
Oh my gosh.
And I have said this.
I can't.
The Lakers were supposed to win that series by the way it was officiated. Like, it was pretty obvious that the refs were calling it one way with LeBron and AD. And maybe it was just LeBron and AD and there wasn't some like giant like conspiracy. I don't think there really was a conspiracy, just to be clear. But LeBron knew how to manipulate the refs. And Nikola Jokic, until that series, did not. And midway through that series, he started flopping. And ever since then, he's gotten more calls. He hasn't gotten enough calls, because I don't know if people know this rule, but anytime you touch a player with two hands in the post, that's a foul. And that happens on every single play. So when I tweet on that Alpi Sengun multiple fouls that Jokic ends up getting that sick and one through contact towards at the end of the game, 1 foul, 2 fouls, 3 fouls, 4 fouls finally called and one, quite literally, because every time Alpi Sengun contacts him with two hands, it is a foul. It is going uncalled, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets that call. Every single star guard gets that call, and that's what bothers me. You get the closeout call in this game, which was the right call on Bruce Brown, on Kevin Durant, but Jokic gets his legs taken out from him on almost every single Sombor shuffle. So why do you not get a closeout call if it's in the mid-range, but you do in the three-point shot? So I had enough of the refs. Like, it was just so frustrating for both sides. I completely understand it. But Ime Udoka had no right to speak, in my opinion, on that game, because he should have been kicked out in the first half when he ran onto the court and clearly was asking to be kicked out of that game, and they didn't kick him out. So this is the consequences of your own actions, referees, is what happened in this game, because you lost control. Subsequently, I have a hard time, if I'm Alpi Sengun, complaining about the referees when both of the other team's centers have been kicked out of the game, and it leads Spencer Jones covering you for the last 80 seconds of overtime. You should win that game even if you're down 6. Like, that was incredible. And shout out, and this is where this conversation flips, AP, Spencer bleeping Jones, man.
Yep.
Holy crap. Guards Kevin Durant for the entire second half of that game. We go into that game on this podcast talking about how Peyton Watson needs to have a big game. They need a third banana, basically. Cam Johnson could step up. Cam Johnson did step up. He was pretty solid in that game after the first quarter. But Peyton Watson comes out on fire like he is going to have that game. Gets taken out by Amen Thompson on a block. It was clean. Comes down, hurts his caboose. And we don't know what his status is moving forward. He's questionable for tonight's game. He's got a bruised hip. It sounds like just a pain tolerance thing. I've not fallen that hard on my hip in years, so I can't blame him if he missed a couple games. Either way, he's out of the picture. Nuggets are down their 3 best defenders, and now they're down to their 4th best defender, who is a guy who probably should have been in the G League, according to everybody, except for David Adelman, who has had ultimate trust in Spencer Jones since day one. Because when we first started this experiment and we're like game 1 of the season, Spencer Jones is still in the rotation. That wasn't just a preseason thing, huh? And that confused even us, the experts, right? Like, we're like, didn't see that little twist coming over Julian Strother too, Yeah. Over Jalen Pickett, weird. And every single minute that Spencer Jones has been in there, he has proved why he deserves to be in there. And he did so against the Houston Rockets, guarding Kevin Durant, guarding Alpi Sengun at the end of the game, playing center, playing multiple positions throughout the course of the game, and hitting two of the biggest shots in the game. Just an incredible performance from Spencer.
Yeah, and I know that the jury's still kind of out with David Adelman with respect to was he the right hire for head coach, but I'm hard pressed to believe that Malone makes that same adjustment and puts that same amount of faith into Spencer Jones as David Adelman has. So that's a feather in his cap right now. Like I said, I think that's a great adjustment, and just not even an adjustment, but the assertiveness of the belief in a guy like Spencer Jones, a second-year player for the Denver Nuggets, I believe, out of Stanford. And, you mentioned it. And, the interesting thing to me is I remember in our preview show on Monday, I was talking about how Denver's going to have to score like 130 points. They end up scoring 128 in this game. But the only reason it's 128, 125 is because the game goes to overtime. And so I think even down Peyton Watson, you mentioned Cam Johnson, we know AG and Christian Brown out there. I liked the level of focus from Denver defensively throughout the course of this game as well.
Yeah, I'd have to go into it exactly, but it's been at least 3 or 4 times where the third leading scorer for a game this season has been Tim Hardaway. Tim Hardaway was the third leading
40
scorer.
minutes.
He was fantastic. He hit some big shots. He was running around on defense. He was doing his job. The only thing I worry about with Tim Hardaway, and David Adelman's mentioned it, I don't want to start Tim, and I don't want to play him 40 minutes a night. I don't even want to play him 35.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not that I don't think Tim is capable of it. It's just that Tim's older, and we saw what happened when Reggie Jackson, who was good, and I continue to hold this out, he was good at the start of the 2024 season. He really was. And then Jamal got hurt, and he played way too many minutes, and he just completely gassed out. So that's the one thing I watch with Tim Hardaway is they just cannot play him too much. And unfortunately right now, until, Monday's game when Julian Strawther came back but didn't actually play, they've been down Strawther at his position. They've been down Brown at his position. They've had to slide guys from his position, Peyton Watson and Spencer Jones, up to the forward position because of Aaron Gordon. So all of this is leading Tim Hardaway to play more minutes, which, again, isn't a bad thing because he's been good. But it's just you want that guy completely healthy on fresh legs for the playoffs if that is possible. So that is one of the kind of consequences that is negative from this injury. We're seeing the positive consequences from these injuries with Spencer Jones getting an opportunity and proving that he's an NBA player. So that's been fun to see. But it ultimately was just the Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic show. And this is, again, something that's like a little bit worried back in the back of my head of, are they relying on these two guys a little too much too early? But this is the best the two-man game has looked, in my opinion, since early in that 2024 season when the Nuggets were playing absolutely phenomenal basketball. And then they just kind of hit a wall at some point. But, they were kind of at that championship peak level from 23 all the way to midway through 2024. And it's the best Jamal and Nikola have looked together since then. And they're just playing beautiful basketball.
Yeah, they're totally in sync right now, are Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And I think ultimately that's what they've needed, being down 2 critical starters, Peyton Watson being banged up right now as well. And look, I know we'll talk about the Orlando matchup, which they played tonight, but I'm not trying to look ahead. Let's hope the Nuggets aren't looking ahead to that to the rematch on Saturday. But the fact that we get to see these two teams again in Denver face off against one another, man, I mean, that is get your popcorn ready, get there early, watch the warm-ups. Maybe there's a little feistiness with Ime Udoka and the Rockets and Sengun with Jokic and the Nuggets and whatnot. Saturday night is going to be absolute prime time cinema for this Denver Nuggets and Houston Rockets matchup, and I cannot wait.
It's a Saturday matinee.
You're correct. Apologies.
So not a primetime game. But it might be better for those of you with football things going on, because I think the college football playoff and NFL games are Saturday. So going to be a packed sports day Saturday in, all sports.
I love matinee basketball, by the way. Big fan. I love those, they don't do, I think there's a couple Sunday, 1 p.m. tips around there. I love daytime sports. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, you're the biggest believer in daytime sports there is out there. You love it.
I'm a morning guy. You're a night owl. So I think that's I like waking up, little coffee, little, lunch, go on the walk, 1 o'clock, away we go. Big fan.
This is why you should get into soccer. All the games are super early.
Well, I need Italy to clinch the World Cup qualifying matches. And then I like the international stuff, but yeah, I would agree with you on that.
So Donnarumma, who's Italy's goaltender.
Oh, my guy.
And
World Cup champion.
Yeah. He is, I've got a lot of Italians.
Kind of looks like Sengun a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. On my in-law side, I've got a lot of Italians. and Donnarumma, oh man, I forget which, it was a Champions League match last year, and it was Liverpool. All the Italians and my in-laws are all Liverpool fans, and they're like, Donnarumma's their guy, and they don't go through because Donnarumma makes like 2 PK saves. And I was texting him like, what, like, how do you even like parse this? Because to me, it was like the similar situation of Jokic playing for Serbia last year against the Americans in the Olympics, where it's like, Jokic is my guy. Like, I cannot root against Jokic.
I was rooting for Serbia.
Straight up, I was rooting for Serbia.
I don't like LeBron. I like Steph, but I want the Jokic story to continue.
Right. I know
all the madness.
And I know I'm a rare person where I love KD. So, like, I loved most of those American guys. But it's like, you have all of Jokic's ops on that team. You have AD, you have LeBron, you have Anthony Edwards. And Jason Tatum is just like, I have no feeling about Jason Tatum. And I'm just sitting there like, why would I root for the Americans when I could have my guy? So it's like those weird alliances that happen in sports where it's like, now I'm just like a Team Serbia international basketball fan, I guess, over the Americans, which factually is true. So yeah, that's something that happened last year. Anyway, tonight we've got a guy who was on that Team USA team but did not play much, Paolo Banchero, coming to Ball Arena, featuring maybe, if Tristan da Silva plays, 2 Colorado Buffaloes, Jamal Mosley, their head coach, as well. They are playing up and down basketball. They have not won 2 straight or lost 2 straight since November. They win 1, lost 1, and their last game was a loss. Is that an indicator that their next game will be a win? I don't know. But they've been kind of in this rut since Wagner went down with a high ankle sprain. The Mo Wagner's already out for like an extended stretch. I forget exactly what his injury is. And then you've got Jalen Suggs, who is out tonight. And to me, this Orlando team is one of the best teams in the East when they have Jalen Suggs. So without Jalen Suggs tonight, and I haven't checked the line on this game, Anilo, yet.
6.5.
What is it?
6.5. I'm
not surprised by that. If it was Jalen Suggs was healthy, Franz Wagner was healthy, I would say this would be like kind of a -2 game for the Nuggets. So, and again, this is a situation for the Nuggets where they're without much of their team. So I don't know what we're really going to take away from this game tonight, but Orlando is a really tough physical team. They get to the free throw line more than any other team in the NBA. They allow the fewest 3-point shots, I believe, in the NBA. So they run you off the line. They allow a ton of assists too. So look for a big Jokic kind of just working it at the point, getting a lot of assist type game. And I would expect this to be a little bit lower of a scoring game, especially with the talent not there and the team's playing pretty physical ball as of late. So that's what I expect from tonight's game. Any notes on Orlando?
No, I would agree with you. I think Orlando, I know Jalen Suggs isn't out there, but they seem to be more of a defense first team as opposed to a scoring team, which I know is kind of rare. You're always going to score points in this day and age with the NBA, right? But like it seems they put a real emphasis on the defensive side of the basketball. And you'd have to wonder, I was about to say you have to wonder how Denver comes out after the tough, overtime game, but they've had 2 full days of rest. So I actually think that bodes well for them. So they should be relatively fresh despite having to play the extra minutes there, with Jokic and Murray and Tim Hardaway and company. And, obviously I think the question is going to be how much longer can they sustain, assuming Peyton Watson doesn't play tonight? Like, how much more can we rely on Spencer Jones? I think he's been great, in the minutes and the opportunities he's been given. We need Cam Johnson to step up a little bit more, right? But it's like you have Nikola Jokic, you have Jamal Murray. I'm not trying to say I think the bottom is going to fall out with this Denver Nuggets team, but you do have to wonder if at some point the injuries do catch up to them. And again, you also have to wonder and factor in, are they looking ahead to that rematch with Houston on Saturday? Do they look at Orlando and say, hey, they're down a couple of different guys here. We're at home. We're still kind of riding high after that overtime game. I think the focus has to be dialed in for Denver if they want to make sure to get this job done and take care of business against a scrappy Orlando team.
So one thing that happened in that Houston game, which is completely inverse to something that's been happening with the Nuggets since KCP left, is the Nuggets actually shut down a small guard and Reed Shepherd, scoring like 20 points a game. Reed did not do anything in that game. In fact, was completely picked on defense by the Nuggets, who don't normally play that game and just kind of matchup hunting and Reed Shepherd and all that. So the one guy, or there's not one guy, but this guy has given the Nuggets problems for years, going back to the Memphis days when he was part of that like budding rivalry, and that's Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane is on this Orlando team, and he's playing pretty good basketball right now. He started to figure it out, started to mesh. The problem is with Spencer Jones, are you putting him on Desmond Bain, or are you putting him on Paolo Banchero? Because the Nuggets do have kind of that tough question, especially if Peyton Watson's not there. So Peyton Watson, I think, is one of the best defenders in the league on guys like Kevin Durant, guys like Paolo Banchero. Maybe one of the 5 best, the first maybe being Aaron Gordon. So that's kind of a tough question for David Adelman to ask, and something I'll be interested in, as is, again, how they follow up that performance against the Houston Rockets come Saturday, especially if Peyton Watson's down. You looked at that game, and Kevin Durant really got hot there for a second because the Nuggets didn't really have an answer for him. Spencer Jones isn't as big as Peyton Watson, isn't as lengthy as Peyton Watson, so he did his best, but ultimately, it's one of the best shot makers in the history of the NBA going at you, and there's not much of an answer. I thought they defended Alpi Sengun pretty well, especially for how much foul trouble they were in. Mm-hmm. And you started to see the thing David Adelman really craves from this team, and that's that physicality and setting the tone early on in the season of the Nuggets are a physical team, so the refs are going to give them more of a rope. Well, you saw that kind of play out in live time and it go against them in that game because they had 2 guys foul out. But it's setting the standard for later on in the year of this is going to be a really physical game, physical team. One guy I really liked in that Houston game who barely scored was Bruce Brown. He grabbed 9 boards, had 3 steals. I think he was doing a lot of the small energy things. So if you could get Bruce to do some of those things again against Houston, especially if Peyton Watson isn't there, I think that's really essential for that game against the Rockets on Saturday.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And again, I know they play Orlando tonight. Like outside of that, like I know you kind of laid it out, very poetically there. Like what in layman's terms, what do you think are the keys for Denver to take down Houston for the second game in a row or third game? Let me re-say that one more time. What do you think are the keys for Denver to take down Houston for the 3rd time in a row this season?
I think it's trying to get into Kevin Durant's chili. They were really good in Houston, both about Kevin Durant and Alpi Sengun. It was 2 of their lowest scoring games of the year. That didn't play out well in Denver. Both those guys started to get loose, get hot a little bit. So if they can get them at least somewhere halfway between those 2 performances, I think that's super helpful. I don't expect Reed Shepherd to have that bad of a shooting game again. And if Tari Eason's available, that's just more size, more defensive girth coming at you if you're the Denver Nuggets. And that is an issue because they're just dealing with waves and waves of Rockets that can bother you. Steven Adams is a guy I thought they did a really good job in that game of making his impact, which is huge, as one of the best offensive rebounders in the league, marginalized, especially because they have Jonas Valanciunas. I thought the Valanciunas-Jokic minutes together were really nice in that game. That's the first time we saw them play out well. But I don't know that they can really go to it much when both guys are in foul trouble. So I'd like to see them stay a little bit more out of foul trouble. I'd like to see maybe a little splash of Julian Strawther or some more movement shooting from Tim Hardaway Jr. to kind of get the Rockets out of the paint and get them moving about a bit, because the Nuggets were best in that game on Monday when they finally were able to access the paint, which didn't happen till late. I mean, Amen Thompson was sitting low as just kind of an extra defender at points in that game, and they were really playing the defense the Thunder did in the 25 playoffs of just like, let's make Joker and Jamal beat us. And eventually they did, but it was kind of going off shooters and stuff. And when you have, honestly, Peyton Watson and Spencer Jones out there, you'd rather them be wide open than not double Jamal and Joker. So I'm going to be really interested to see Ime Udoka, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league, make adjustments within a short period against the Nuggets, because that's going to be telling of what these 2 teams will look like in the playoffs, which is highly likely that these 2 teams will match up in the playoffs.
Well, I think it's also going to be a hyper-competitive matchup when they square up again on Saturday afternoon, just because that loss is going to be fresh in the Houston Rockets' mind. And I'm curious as to how Denver's going to handle, what we think is going to be a Houston team playing with a little bit more energy, a little bit more focus to try to get back on track and get right after a game in which Houston felt like they were robbed of to a certain extent. So I'm wondering how Denver's going to hold up with a blitz that we might see from Houston here. Of course, we know they're still down Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, maybe even Peyton Watson for that matchup on Saturday. So I think you're going to get the Houston Rockets' best punch. And look, I think Denver deserved to win that game on Monday night, but I'm very, very interested to see how the response is, assuming you're going to get a Rockets team that's going to come out guns a-blazing. It's going to be an absolute banger, man. Get your popcorn ready. That is going to be must-watch basketball.
And this game isn't just about like, hey, what's it going to look like in the future? If the Nuggets win this game, they earn the tiebreaker on the Houston Rockets.
Great point.
So if these 2 teams tie for second, the Nuggets get home court if they win this game. If these two teams tie for third, it bumps the Rockets down to 4, and they have a second round matchup all of a sudden with Oklahoma City instead of the Nuggets. So just keep in mind that while this game doesn't seem like it's that important, it's December, this game could decide something in the standings in the end, besides just the normal how important a win is. That's what we'll be watching between now and Monday when we talk to you next here on the Mile High Hoops podcast. He's Danilo Piro. I'm Jake Shapiro. Make sure you stay tuned to all of our coverage on denversports.com. I will have updates on all the injuries going on with the Nuggets coming up the next few days. They're at home, so they practice quite a bit more. And I will be able to see the team play in person a lot more because they are at home right now. So we'll talk to you on Monday after 2, hopefully, big Nuggets games.